Russia's central bank has now cut key rates to 16.5% as well. If you noted that, so that's the fourth consecutive rate since June, if I remember correctly, when the central bank was easing policy from the wartime. I think the highest it was at 21%. So talk us through what implications you think that could have in the short term for the rest of the year, perhaps.
Again, there are two sides: the pure economic side of things, and which is much more important side is what is behind the closed curtain, the political struggle side. So there are two clans fighting over influence right now. One clan is where Nabiullina is a part of, and that's called the liberals. Those who are in charge of Russian economy. Another clan is those who are controlling the military-industrial complex, the hawks.
Mm-hmm.
And they are trying. They're trying to. Each side is trying to get more influence, and military-industrial complex pressed Nabiullina very hard. Okay, and then she started lowering, cutting the key interest rate. But those times are over because you cannot cut it any lower than that. I was expecting the rate to be kept at the same level. Instead, they cut it by 0.5%, which is, let's say, cosmetics. Okay, it cannot change anything in the Russian economy. It cannot make loans so much cheaper that the Russian companies would just suddenly get a breath of fresh air and say, oh, great, now we can borrow money from the banks and so forth. So it's very cosmetic change. I think that Russian economy is in deep trouble, and the both solutions in order to keep the inflation down, under control, not down, but under control really. You need high interest rate, but the thing is that you are definitely cooling the economy off. You are killing the companies, the civil industries, and you are hurting the military-industrial complex. They need cheaper money to somehow work. And then there are no investments right now because all foreign investors are gone, and domestic investors also gone, left Russia with their money. Because usually investors are smart people and they assess the risks. And the only capital that Russian companies can have access to is bank loans, but they cannot borrow at 22, 23%. And cutting by 0.5% is not going to help much. Basically, it's a Zugzwang. Every move makes the situation worse, one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at Western examples where you've cut rates by 0.5%, 0.25%, and all it's illustrated is that the following quarter or even year is severe stagnation, economic stagnation, and I think that that's essentially what the central bank is signaling here, that next year is going to be economic stagnation. But it's not just internally based on that. It's also, we have to consider the exogenous pressures like the sanctions and Ukraine's continued strikes on supply chains and sites. So, with all that in mind, what do you think could happen next in the next sort of couple of months? When we obviously chat in November, things may be more clear, but this is looking as a pretty precarious situation, and the central bank is running out of options.
Well, first of all, I don't think that European economists have ever experienced economic situation like it is in Russia right now, because it's really a perfect storm of so many factors. For example, European countries have always had access to international money markets, and they could borrow cheaply. They could sell debt, national debt. Russia cannot do that. Now, European countries always had private investors, and Russians don't have private investors right now. All capital has fled Russia, okay, foreign and domestic. International sanctions There is no free trade. European countries have never experienced being under such sanctioned pressure. Inability to sell the bread makers, fossil fuels, the metals. For Russia, it's the bread makers, it's fossil fuels and metals. Imagine that for Europe, it's something else. But imagine that something else Europeans cannot export, so they cannot sell it to foreign markets. And there is a huge, instant drop in active labor force. 4 million now. My bet is 3 million of Russian men have fled Russia, and 1 million is currently at the front lines or killed. That's a huge blow to labor market, an instant one. That's over 5%. Imagine that. As economists, you understand that when it happens instantly, that that's not good. Europeans have never experienced it. So this is the perfect storm of cosmic proportion. I call it the economic tsunami because there's not much you can do. If you see a tsunami, you cannot stop it. You have to run and hide on a high elevation somewhere. But in Russia, it's the same thing. The only thing you can stop it is to stop the war, pull all the troops back onto Russian territory, take responsibility for what you've done, repent, and try to rebuild with Ukraine and with the European, well, not just European, but the global community. Try to show that, you are healthy again. Then becoming healthy is you need to take responsibility. That's number one. And repent. That's number two.